Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Guiding Hands. Today is just a solo video from me, Kevin, and I'll be showing you guys how to do some sight reading for piano. Now, originally, this was supposed to be a video on basic tips of how to uh, do well when you're playing piano. However, sight reading is a portion that's really important, and my footage for that is much too long. So here's a separate video for it. All right, guys. So before you even get to the piano, the most important thing is actually understanding what are you actually playing on the piano, because without actually understanding what you're going to play, um, you simply can't physically play. So firstly, you have to understand how to read the notes on the piano, and I think that's one of the most important steps. This is probably going to be the longest part in the video, so I'm going to try and get over as fast as possible. But yeah. Learning the piano is not easy, and one reason is you basically have to learn how to read what's on the piano. It's like learning how to read a new language essentially. So right now you see four sets of groups of lines, I guess, kind of horizontally. Don't ignore the vertical ones. And yeah, so yeah, you have 5 lines on top, 5 lines on bottom, and 2 enclosed rectangles. Now, essentially, how you can see this is basically, let's say you're writing an essay, physically writing, not on Google Docs, but physically writing. Let's say you need lined paper. This is essentially a blank sheet of blank paper, of lined paper, essentially getting ready to be written on. Okay, so let's add one thing. Okay. So now we are on the next slide. As you can see, there are two identical symbols. You can just focus on one of them for now, the one on top. This is what we call the treble clef. And as per definition, a treble clef is a type of musical notation that indicates pitch. Now, if you don't understand that, that's okay, because I don't even understand completely how to explain this to you guys. But it's just a symbol, and just treat it as it is for now, okay? Now, when I was in music theory, we had to learn to draw it. Essentially a swirl, and at this point you go up and then straight down through the middle, and then with a bit of a circle there. So this is a treble clef. You guys don't really have to know anything else about it for now, okay? But it basically tells you which notes are gonna be where for this particular clef. In a different clef, the notes are situated differently. That's essentially what you need to know on the sheet music paper. Okay, so here are the most basic notes. Now, most piano scales, this is what we call a scale right here, a set of 8 notes, start with C. Well, not most, but the simplest one starts with C. And that's because there is nothing complicated about it. These 8 notes are essentially 8 straight notes that are on the piano, all the white notes, none of the black keys, just the white keys. And so essentially the simplest one would be C right here. Now, as you can see, C is on a line below the 5 lines. It is the first line below the 5 lines. Any note below the 5 lines, you have to draw a line on it, unless you refer to D, obviously, which is right under the first line. In this case, it is fine. So it goes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Not quite in alphabetical order as it starts with C, but very close. So the first thing you gotta do is get the hang of what these notes look like. Now, if you keep going up, every time you go from a line to a space to the next line to a space, then that is what we refer to as a step. And sometimes they refer to as half steps as well, but that's only in certain cases, and we'll go over that later. But for now, we'll refer to each one as a step. From this C on, this is what we call treble C. This C here is what we call middle C, because it's directly in the middle of the 2 main clefs. We'll go over the second one later. But this is what we call middle C. It's typically the C in the near the center of the piano horizontally. Okay, treble C is to its right, and bass C would be to its left. So treble C is here. If you went up to the 4th line, it would be D, and then it would just keep going up and up. And this pattern repeats throughout the piano. So yeah, one of the most essential steps is to familiarize yourself with these notes. Now, if you struggle to do this, there are different acronyms you can use. For example, all the space notes, let's look at the second one here, spell out the word face, F-A-C-E. The first space is F, and so on. Now the line notes, there are 5 line notes because there's 5 lines and there's 4 spaces in between. And if you're wondering why D is not in the space notes, it's because it's below, so they didn't really count it here. But yeah, this D, this is treble D. The other one would be middle D. So anyways, these are the line notes, and so it spells out E, G, B, D, F. Now, an acronym I always learned was every good boy deserves fudge. And yeah, so essentially what you got to do is really familiarize yourself with the treble clef. Now, if I am speaking too fast, you can feel free to pause and note the video anywhere. But yeah, this is uh, basically the essentials of learning how to read the treble clef on the piano. And it honestly goes the same for many other instruments because a lot of other instruments also use the treble clef for its uh, musicians. Now, moving on now, as you saw at the next page, I know this seems like a lot, but now we essentially need to double your knowledge of sight reading because for now we're learning another clef. This is the bass clef. And as you can see, it starts with C and ends with C as usual because C is the simplest scale. And here, this C right here is the second space. So that's when you know it's a bit different from the treble clef because the second space here is A. Essentially, the bass clef looks a lot simpler. It's just really a curve with 2 dots. Now, this C right here, the second space would be C. Anything below it would go now to lower. So this line right here, the second line, would be lower B, and then lower A, and then lower G, and so on. Now, this goes up high, and now this C right here, it is 1 line above the 5th line of the bass clef. This is, again, middle C. And so as you can see, middle C is the first line below the first line of the treble clef and the line above the 5th line of the bass clef. And so it's essentially directly in the middle of these 2 clefs. On the piano, this is the exact same note, middle C, toward the middle of the piano. And so yeah, this would be the bass clef. And as you can see, the space notes are a bit different and the line notes are a bit different. The space notes are now A, C, E, G. How my teacher always told me, all cows eat grass. And for the line notes here, G, B, D, F, A. What my teacher told me was good boys deserve fudge always. So a bit of a tweak to the old one. But yeah, in piano, as you know, you play with 2 hands. Your left hand typically plays the bass clef, and your right hand typically plays the treble clef. And so you really need to familiarize yourself and kind of change your way of playing when you're playing with 1 hand each. And yeah, make sure you're able to read both. And sometimes it's not always that your left hand plays the bass clef. Sometimes it plays a different the treble clef, or sometimes your right hand might play the bass clef. And so you really got to adjust how you think about this if you see a clef change in the middle of your songs. But that is very rare. All right, guys. So that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. My next video will be a part 2 on sight reading because I'm not quite finished yet. And yeah, that will be released within the next 5 years. But for now, that is it. And yeah, I gotta go find my piano because it's unstolen. Thanks, guys. See you in bed.